Let me just say this to all of my colleagues. I just can't tell you how proud we all are of us coming together. And basically we're coming together out of the support of Ukraine. What's happening in Ukraine is absolutely the carnage we see going on. Innocent, peace-loving people being attacked viciously by Russia, by Putin's Russia, let's put it very clearly, Putin's Russia. And we have to do everything we can to support them. I was very proud of the President when he said that basically there won't be 1 inch of NATO land that we will not defend. That's a strong statement, and I feel very strongly about that. And I think showing the support that we have and united about this, we will. But one, what we can make no mistake, this is energy has become a weapon of war for Putin, and he's using that as a weapon of war. He's using it against all of Europe, if you will. But Ukraine is basically the catalyst of what he's doing. So what we're doing today is we introduced a bill. It's been dropped. We have, I think there's 18 of us, 9 Ds and 9 Rs, that are on this piece of legislation that basically bans the Russian Energy Imports Act. That's all it is. We're banning Russian Imports Act. What we're banning is basically petroleum products, crude oil, LNG. What we're doing today is we introduced a bill. It's been dropped. We have, I think there's 18 of us, 9 Ds and 9 Rs that are on this piece of legislation that basically bans the Russian Energy Imports Act. That's all it is. We're banning Russian Imports Act. What we're banning is basically petroleum products, crude oil, LNG, coal, mostly all fossils coming in the United States and whatever they should be. It's an impressive group that we've put together here, but we're also united. And basically, if we can't show the uniting support that we have for Ukraine and backing Ukraine and making sure our allies, NATO allies, know how supportive we are and that we're united behind them too and protecting them, if we can't do that here, that's going to be very hard to have them holding lines together, and that's been always my concern. I've said this as a young person. I think I'm the oldest person here. No. Let me just say, I've never been more concerned since the Cuban Missile Crisis. As a young 15-year-old, I remember that vividly. And man, we were scared, I mean really scared that what could happen because we knew the effects of a nuclear war. I'm as concerned now about what this could escalate into if we don't do what we're doing now and stop. And hopefully he will understand the economics of this to his country and the detriment to his own country and Putin. So with that, I think we can show solidarity here, but also we can make a difference. It also shows you the fragility of energy in the markets around the world and what we're dealing with. The United States has the ability to backfill and help all of our allies around the world as they use this energy as a weapon. But we have to make sure that we're doing ours. We do it cleaner than anybody else. We do it in a better fashion than anybody else. And we have the ability with the reserves to do much more during this crisis, time of crisis. So I hope we all take that in consideration. So we're going to step up, and we're asking the government to step up. I've spoken to most of the largest CEOs, petroleum CEOs in the United States that basically are all over the world. They have markets over the world. They have their tentacles everywhere in the world. And spoke to all of them. I asked them, I said, I want you to do everything you possibly can. They said, we have basically started aggressively pulling back all of our investments and pulling back all of our dependency on Russian products. That's great. I applaud them for that. And I said, I need you to do something else. I need you to make sure you make a commitment that basically the United States economy and the citizens of the United States will not be impacted because of corporate profits or shareholders' profits, whatever it would be, during this period of time of crisis. They all said this is a matter of national unity for us too. And I was very proud to hear that. So I'm going to say that everyone seems to be very much on board 100% and supporting this effort. So with that, I have no concerns that we should have any shortages right here. So the United States of America in 2019 was producing 12 million barrels a day, 12.3. We're down 11.2 because of COVID. Market dropped off. We have no problem at all ramping back up with what we already have ready to go. So we can backfill that. We have a tremendous amount of LNG. We have a tremendous amount of gas that we can produce the LNG for. We're expanding on our exports as far as with our LNG terminals. Germany is putting 2 terminals to receive LNG, so they don't have to depend on Russia. And it's up to us to make sure that we connect all of that together. So without further ado, I want to thank one of our co-sponsors, one of our lead co-sponsors, and everyone you see here. This is a bicameral event. You have House members and Josh Gottheimer and Brian Fitzpatrick here, and then basically the group that we put together. So I'll bring Lisa Murkowski up at this time, and Lisa, if you will.
Thank you. So it's good to be working with my buddy Joe Manchin on bipartisan things. There's been a flurry of bills that you have seen, ideas floated out there in the past week, bills that have been introduced. I think the difference with what you have here is this is bipartisan. This means it actually has some legs, and the fact that it is bicameral as well, I think, is one of the reasons why you've got so many folks that are gathered here today, because this is actually something that can make a difference, that can get Putin's attention. Senator Manchin has used the words, Putin is not afraid to weaponize energy. He's been doing that. We've seen it all along into this lead up. And there's been an approach and a policy from this administration that says, we don't want to do that. We don't want to put that on the table. Well, I'm sorry, sir. It's already on the table, and it's been put on the table by Putin. And so what can we do to respond? Well, I will tell you today, our message should be pretty clear and pretty simple. No more Russian energy should come into the United States for the duration of this bloody, horrifying, and unprovoked war against Ukraine. So this measure is in direct response to what Russia is doing with the bombing of the schools and the hospitals and the apartment buildings, forcing the Ukrainians to flee their country, killing the innocents that remain, and using some of the worst weapons in the world and indiscriminately to do it. So these are not just acts of war, they're war crimes. And there should not be a single additional American dollar allowed to finance these atrocities. So the president has said, I'm going to use every tool in the toolbox. Mr. President, this is a tool. This is a tool. The one tool that might just force Vladimir Putin to sue for peace here. So we've got an opportunity here to address this. We in this country can move today to ban Russian energy imports. So we know that we've been bringing crude oil, Russian crude, into this country and oil products. But we've been seeing those numbers drop. Back in 2021, everyone's looking at those numbers. It's about 700,000 barrels that were coming in. We've started to see companies that are basically self-sanctioning in light of Russia's activities. According to EIA's preliminary data, U.S. crude imports from Russia were near zero at January. So to Senator Manchin's point, we can backfill all of this, but I think people need to kind of put it into context in terms of how much we might need to step up. I'm confident that we can fill the supply gaps by American production along with our allies in Canada, for instance. So I would urge the president, take your counterproductive policies like taxes and royalty hikes, take them off the table. Give the industry the confidence that it needs to be producing more. He might not want to hear this, but I think the most important step that can be taken right now to lower domestic gas prices, because that's what everybody wants. How are we going to get the prices down? It's almost psychological in nature. He's got to change course. He's got to embrace American energy. He's got to tell the public that he's doing this. That's going to do a lot more to calm than some temporary SPRO sale. We've seen that. You don't get much mileage out of that in terms of reduction in the price. You don't see it calming the markets. So to me, this is clear as day. We are not going to send Russia any more U.S. dollars to help them kill innocent people. This bill will do it. It's bipartisan, it's bicameral, and it needs to move, and it needs to move today. So let's go to the other side of the House here. Josh Gottheimer.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for inviting us over. We will leave within a half hour. Don't worry. Thank you, Joe, for inviting us, and Lisa. Thanks very much. And it's great to be with all my colleagues and with Brian Fitzpatrick, who's co-chairman with me of the Problem Solvers Caucus. You know, in times of great distress at home or abroad, we have always done best when we've stood together as one nation with our allies. As Putin's forces continue their brutal invasion to the Ukraine, the United States must stand strong against the Russian dictator. So we're joining together today to cut off Putin's largest revenue source and to support America's own energy independence and security. And we're joining forces both across the aisle and, as Lisa said, across both chambers to lead bipartisan bicameral legislation to ban Russian oil and petroleum from being imported to the United States. And as we're announcing today, and as I'm here with Brian Fitzpatrick, who I mentioned as co-chair of the Problem Solvers Caucus, we plan to bring, not only lead in the charge in the House, but of course to bring it to the Problem Solvers Caucus for consideration. We've already taken critical steps. The Commander-in-Chief has responded quickly and aggressively to the conflict, rallying together with our NATO and democratic allies, helping build an international coalition to counter Russia, support Ukraine, and protect democratic values. We've shut down Putin's access to assets in the United States and sanctioned Russia's major banks. Important first steps, but to truly deter Putin, we need to do more. Just today, my home state of New Jersey, there, the governor, Phil Murphy, signed an executive order requiring all state agencies to temporarily revoke any contracts, permits, or licenses currently issued to companies controlled by Russia or Belarus. This is the type of impactful action we need. But now, despite widespread condemnation of Russia's actions, the United States must do more. And we have to continue to do more to import as well more than 500,000 barrels of oil each day. That must stop immediately. By banning the import of Russian oil here in the United States, we have the opportunity to work with our allies to stabilize the energy market across the world, safeguard our nation's energy security, and boost our own energy independence. It's time to ban all imports of Russian oil. And the U.S. and our allies have already announced the initial release of 60 million barrels of oil from the Spro. Obviously, we've got to do more. Now's the time to act together, here at home and with our allies abroad, and ban imports of Russian oil. And we stand strong. We're glad to hear positive feedback from the Speaker on this effort. This is a moment for people who love democracy at home and around the world to unite, and that's what we must do as Democrats and Republicans here in the greatest country in the world. And now I'm very honored to introduce my co-chair of the Problem Solvers Caucus, Brian Fitzpatrick. Thanks.
When it comes to Ukraine, I think we all can agree that we have a collective similar feeling, and that is pit in the stomach. How is it possible that in the year 2022 we could be witnessing what we're seeing on TV, things that we thought were permanently relegated for the history books? My last international assignment as an FBI agent was in Ukraine. I lived there. Those are my friends that are under assault right now. And it's there where I will be flying tomorrow afternoon to go to the Poland-Ukrainian border to be with some of them. And this is one of the things we're going to be talking about. As my colleague said, there should not be a single dime, not a single cent of taxpayer dollars funding Vladimir Putin's murder machine. And it's a very simple concept. It's one that's overwhelmingly bipartisan, as is evidenced in here. Speaker Pelosi today said she supports the concept of completely banning imports of Russian oil into the United States. This should not be difficult. I personally think we're going to be going a lot further than this, but this is a very, very good first step. I want to compliment and thank my friends and colleagues, many of whom we've worked together on some other very, very monumental pieces of legislation. This is really, really important to send a signal, not only to do what's right and not contribute a dime to Russia's economy, particularly when it comes to oil, but to send a message around the world that every single country should be doing this. We have to tighten the noose around Russia's economy if we want to continue to deter him from killing innocent, amazing, courageous Ukrainian citizens, many of whom, close to half, were born after 1991, after they won their independence. They know little of and want nothing of Kremlin rule. And we got to do everything we can, as my colleague said, in our toolbox to make sure that we stand behind them unequivocally and unapologetically. Senator Tester from Montana.
Thank you. It's been said already, Putin has weaponized energy. I don't believe this country should be importing anything from Russia, but the fact of the matter is energy is something that Putin depends upon for his finances, and he's depending on it to fight this war in Ukraine. We see the tragedy that's happening in Ukraine for the last week. It is the very least that we can do to stop any energy imports into this country. I think it will have a dramatic effect, and it will send even a bigger message that the United States is in this with the Ukrainians for the long haul. I just want to thank Joe and Lisa for bringing us together. We almost got the band back together, guys.
No, looks good.
But thank you very much. If I could see, I'd tell you who's next.
I think John,
We'll talk Portman, it says.
he's up there. You're up there, buddy.
Oh, me?
Okay.
So Nancy Pelosi is with us, which made me wonder, what am I doing? She's right.
Putin brings everybody.
Yeah, listen, you've done something Putin nobody else could do. And so I want to thank Joe and the whole squad up here for getting us behind an idea that's long overdue but not too late. So this will be a significant blow to Putin's war machine. A crippling blow would be if other countries would follow our lead. So here's my call. Listen to what we're doing here in America and follow us to the extent you can. Lisa mentioned suing for peace. Putin's never going to sue for peace. How does this end? Eventually, the Russian people are going to have to decide to get rid of this guy. As long as he's your leader, you're going nowhere. The world has turned a blind eye and a deaf ear to war crimes and murder and thievery for the past 20 years. The Ukrainian people have broken that cycle. None of us are going to treat this like Syria, which was a disaster, where we pump our, beat our chest and forget about it. This is about to become an insurgency. Cities will fall, but the Ukrainian people will not fall. So this is an emergency declaration. It's a really smart idea, Joe. This is a national emergency. We're going to suspend Russian imports of oil during the emergency. Well, I'm here to tell you this is going to go for a very long time. This won't be weeks. This could be years. And what I hope will happen over time is that the world will follow our lead here. If you hit him in the energy, the oil, gas sector of his economy, he will fail. Never in the history of warfare has a bad guy been so exposed as Putin is today. The revenue from oil and gas keeps him afloat. If we can isolate the oil and gas sector, produce more here at home, that will do more to end this war than any single thing I can think of.
Rob? We have John first. John Hickenlooper. And then Rob.
Well, I'd like you to echo the gratitude of everybody to getting the band back together again.
Yeah,
Thanks,
the band.
Joe and Lisa. You know what? In 2021, we imported about 700,000 barrels of Russian petroleum products per day. At present prices, that's pretty close to $75 million a day. That's going to fund their war machine. And I think the U.S., as the leader of the free world, and I'm old enough, Joe, remember when we used to talk about America leading the free world? Well, the one thing you can certainly say about Joe Biden is he has unified the free world in a way that has never happened before. NATO's never been so unified. Switzerland is now on board with this. And I think if more people figure out that they can follow America's lead in banning the import of Russian oil in response to Putin's heinous actions, it will make a significant difference and will accelerate the end of this tragedy. My beef, and I feel I have a very good friend in Denver who did 2 years in the Peace Corps in Ukraine. So I've been he's been talking to me for the last several months. And the beef is not with the Russian people. It's with Putin. And I think the sooner the Russian people recognize that the world is against their leader, that there will be, that opportunity will come and there will be a change. But until then, we've got to do everything we can in this country to make sure that we cut off those imports. It's going to accelerate the transition we're already seeing from into sun-driven energy and wind-driven energy, water-driven energy. That acceleration is only going to help make us more independent from these types of situations. Anyway, who's?
Rob. Roll it up.
So it's nighttime in Ukraine, and we will again see horrific images on our TV screens of artillery fire, missiles being fired into cities like Kharkiv and Kyiv. They're hitting apartment buildings, they're hitting hospitals, they're hitting daycare centers. Yesterday, they even damaged the Holocaust Memorial in Kyiv. This is indiscriminate shelling that is killing thousands of civilians. The numbers we have don't tell the whole story because there are people who are under rubble who we can't count. There are children, babies who are in NICU units that have had to leave the hospitals who we haven't counted. This is an atrocity. And the United States of America has an opportunity here, not just to lead the free world, but to help Ukraine more. And one way we can help the people of Ukraine more is to tighten the noose on the Putin economy. Oil and gas, fossil fuels is number one. John McCain's famous saying, this is a country of thugs that runs a big gas station. Without those oil and gas revenues, the Russian economy definitely craters. So between 50 and 70 million bucks a day going to Russia, why does that make sense? So of course I support this effort, and I thank Joe and Lisa and Fitz, the House members, Josh, who are with us today, because this is important that we be bipartisan, bicameral, and actually get something done here. It's not just about talking. This is about a crisis. People are dying. I was in Ukraine for the last congressional delegation. Gene Shaheen and I led it. It was in January. The people we met with are now in bunkers, fearing for their lives. I've been to the line of contact. The soldiers I met are now under fire. Some of them are dead. These are the people who have turned to us. I was in Cleveland on Sunday night at a rally. 1,000 people showed up in Cleveland, Ohio, Ukrainians, but also Latvians and Lithuanians and Poles and people from all over Eastern and Central Europe supporting this effort, knowing that they've been under the thumb of Russia before and the Soviet Union before, and they're not going to put up with it. They're going to fight. But instead of having them fight to the death, we need to help them be able to fight and survive and to be able to win. So I thank you guys for what you're doing here. I'm strongly in support of it. We need to do much more. By the way, Russia has most favored nation trading status with us. They're in the World Trade Organization, so we give them a preferential trade status with the United States of America. That needs to end. And we need to ask every country around the world to also end that status. That would actually increase the tariff on oil, by the way, among other things. But it's critical that we not just go on as if this is business as usual. Again, tonight, as these bombs are raining down on these cities and killing civilians, we need at the very least to do everything we can to tighten that noose to ensure that the people of Russia at some point say enough. Yet, we're not going to do this. We're not going to be killing our innocent neighbors and suffering these economic consequences. We're going to do something about the corrupt government in Moscow. Thank you guys for doing this.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to read something that just came out. The White House Deputy Secretary, Press Secretary, which I hope spoke on their own behalf and nobody else's behalf, basically said we don't have a strategic interest in reducing the global supply of energy. That would raise prices at the gas pump for Americans. They're so wrong, so wrong. But if there's an inconvenience, because we have to basically change the corporate model of where you get the products to do what they want to do and how they blend, there's other places in the world other than Putin. And when you talk about an inconvenience, can you imagine if you lived in Ukraine right now? I think it's a little bit more than this is life or death. And if they can't show that we can make some sacrifices in order to support them and stop the aggressions of this horrible dictator. And these are innocent people. What Rob just told you, we're seeing kids who are getting basically cancer treatment. And unbelievable, having a hard time getting a sterile place to do it. All of us, I mean, my goodness, for the sake of humankind, this is not right. And for us to think it might be an inconvenience, it's going to inconvenience people, it's going to be, if we don't have an interest in reducing, first of all, we don't have to reduce. We can basically produce whatever needs to be produced. We just do our job. Get back to 12 million barrels a day. Doesn't displace anybody or anything. I don't know what we're waiting on. What was there such a big problem? We have the natural gas, more natural gas in almost any place in the world, next to the Middle East. But yet, if that's basically the desire that this press secretary, I'm not even saying this administration, but this press secretary, or deputy press secretary, whoever it may be, put out a statement like this, it's irresponsible. Irresponsible.
Joe, let me just add on that, because I think it needs
take
to
some
be reinforced that our legislation is not a global ban on Russian oil and gas. It is just domestic. Now, there's been press reports out there that if there were a global ban, it would have
Sure.
a definite increase in the price. We would see it here in this country as they would in Europe and in other places. This is domestic for purposes of this emergency. And so I think you've got a deputy press secretary that perhaps has not looked
At what we're doing.
our actual ban on domestic import from Russia.
I spoke, I'll just give you a few of the corporations that we spoke to and making sure that we understood it. They understood. Conoco, Exxon, Chevron, Shell, Occidental, and Valero. Those are the biggest of the biggest that basically support the American market. They've all committed to do everything humanly possible to adjust wherever their sourcing may be, but have committed that basically they will absolutely pull away from Russian products. That's a strong statement from them. And do it by minimizing, if not affecting, the markets here, because they have to make some logistic changes. We did not reach back anything that might be coming this direction. We did not reach back and stop it. We said anything in the pipeline, but what we will do is stop anything further purchases. That's what we're trying to do. With that, we'll take questions to anybody up here.
Why would we not think this is not the second coming? The sanctions, and based on what you just read from the White House, if that's in fact accurate, where you had bipartisan senators willing to put sanctions into place, ostensibly that was undercut by the White House. Now you're telling us you have a bipartisan piece of legislation here to cut off this importation of oil from Russia. They seem to be undercutting that. Isn't this the second coming of that?
Well, I'm hoping that they did not understand, as Senator Murkowski just pointed out to you, they haven't seen or haven't read our legislation. We just dropped the bill. So the bill just dropped now. I'm sure that they are aware of it by now. They have it. The White House has it. They have it by now. Let's see what they
That's
do.
the same thing that happened with the sanctions. And that's why that backfired.
Well, let me just, the sanction, I'm not going to say that the strategy that was used there, I'm sure Lindsay can speak to it because he's involved on a day-to-day basis. But as I understand that the sanctions, and the reason they were trying to put basically the coalition of NATO. In order to do that, they didn't want to basically get ahead of them. They want everybody on board. Once Russia did what they did in the invasion of Ukraine, then they were able to move. That's what I'm understanding. This is different than that. This is absolutely different.
And think about what has happened since kind of the deal fell apart, where there was supposedly a bipartisan deal, and then the White House comes in and says, no. That was 10 days, 12 days ago. Think about how the world has changed. You've got a unified group of allies, and the world has changed with sanctions out there.
And Chad, to your specific question, I mean, I was one of the negotiators with Jim Risch and a couple others on our side, and this is entirely different. I just read the quote from Nancy Pelosi. I'm all for it. Ban it. I mean, our issue was we didn't have that kind of strong bipartisan support for pre-invasion sanctions, which is what we wanted to do. Would it have made a difference? Nobody can tell you that, but it might have. And now we are where we are. So we got to go forward and I think be more unified and act more quickly. And that's why I love, again, as I said earlier, the fact that we've got the House and the Senate, Republican and Democrat all involved in this. It's a different situation. It has much higher chance of success.
You had your hand up. I'll go there, and then Garrett, and then we'll jump right around.
What share of responsibility do Democrats have in this? Gas prices have been high since before Russia invaded Ukraine, and a lot of the policies that President Biden put in place got us there. So at this point, at what point would you push the president to reverse some of these policies, whether it's killing the Keystone Pipeline, banning drilling on federal lands, among other things?
Sound like you're on my staff. We've been pursuing this. We really have. We have to have an all-in energy policy. There's no doubt about it. And I think what we see happening and what has happened in the last 2 weeks is something beyond our belief. We didn't think this would go to this event. We thought it, basically, with the might of that military, everyone would have backed down. We've seen the strength of freedom, of peace-loving people with freedom. We've seen that strength. We've not seen that type of backbone for a long time in the world. It's people willing to stand up and put their life on the line. Can you imagine putting your wife and your babies on a train for safety and you're going back in? Or people coming over, or Ukrainians that basically are going over there to fight now? I don't think anyone ever thought that would happen. So we have to rethink. I would hope the administration would. We're going to be talking to them in I think, very civil tone that basically this is a time for America to stand tall. You know, they depend on us. The world depends on us. Energy has been weaponized. We have the ability to basically counter that weapon. We really do. And that's what we're asking for. If we're asking, and I've never seen NATO. I never thought that in all honesty, that Germany would actually pony up to the table for 2% of their GDP for defense. I've never seen Switzerland, I ever thought Switzerland would get off the bench. You know, God love them, they're just a peace-loving people, but enough's enough. If you've moved Switzerland off the bench, then we better get off the bench, I can tell you that. And we're going to be moving everything that we had a hearing today, as you know, on the FERC, some decisions they're making, which we think is very detrimental to us and our ability to produce the energy independence that we need.
If the president were to come before the American public tomorrow and give a speech saying that we in this country need to embrace the role that we can take on as a full energy producer, I think that that would do as much to send the signal to help calm the markets, to help address what we're seeing with the daily prices of fuel at the pump. But right now, the signal from this administration is we're going to keep ours in the ground and we're going to count on it from somewhere else. And now we're realizing we've been counting on Russia to help us with that. That signal needs to be uncrossed.
I can't help myself.
No,
There's too much here.
No, I mean, your question is the right one, and you know, my view, I'm not speaking for everybody here, is this is about replacing Russian oil with American and North American resources that this administration has stifled, let's face it. And it's the executive order on public lands, it's the decision to stop the Keystone. Keystone, by the way, is 820,000 barrels per day. So more than all the Russian oil that has been coming in per day, even at its height at about 700,000. So there's replacement right there. Now, you know, that's decision's been made. We are where we are. But there are things, Senator Manchin's absolutely right, we can do to just get our production back up to where it was. Finally, I've gotten a little heat on this issue from some folks saying that, gosh, that's bad for the environment. Because if you cut off Russian oil, then we've got to produce more here. Are you kidding? Who thinks that the Russian oil is being produced in a more environmentally sound way than American oil?
Their gas is
I mean, they've got methane flares all over the country. You know, you can go online and look at the map of the world and you see the methane coming out of it. It's much dirtier in terms of how they produce it. Then they got to send it here by ship, which creates a lot of CO2. So the notion that somehow this is going to be bad for the environment if we cut off Russian oil, just the opposite. It will lead to fewer emissions and also has obvious national security implications right now during this crisis.
I'll give you an example. We have one pipeline, Mountain Valley Pipeline. If that pipeline's 95% built, they could finish it within 2 to 6 months. That pipeline would deliver 2 billion BCF, billion cubic feet a day, 2 billion cubic feet, to go into the market, to go to basically LNGs, to go to Cove Point, to be sent overseas. Immediately we could do that. So we have the ability to do what needs to be done. Yes.
My question is actually for Senator Murkowski, because I think you were starting to address this in a point you made earlier. This legislation wouldn't take any oil out of the global markets. It's just a ban on U.S. imports of Russian oil.
That's
but
right.
Because of it, energy markets are global.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody will buy all those barrels of Russian oil, be it India or China or someone else. So I guess in terms of punishing Putin, how does this do anything to do that other than keep our hands clean of buying his oil?
First of all, I think that there is a moral obligation here. I don't want U.S. dollars to be funding this carnage in Ukraine led by Putin. I think all of us should agree that that is not where we go. Now, it is a global supply out there, but it is not a supply without limitation. Now, we're going to be pushing to do everything that we can to get production up in this country, despite some of the policies that have been put in place that have held us back. Others will likely be trying to do the same. But you can't turn this on a dime. And so in the meantime, you're going to see around the globe pinch points. And what we all need to be doing is making sure that that pinch point is felt most forcefully in Russia, directly to Putin's accounts. So What we can do here in this country, because we are poised to produce more, if just given the right signal, we can help ameliorate the pressure on us. We can help ameliorate the pressure on our allies. But not if we just continue to say, well, we're just going to keep doing what we've been doing and effectively reward Putin. That's wrong.
Let me jump in and say this. First of all, the market's shrinking. There's very few people that are buying Russian products. They're moving away every day. So you mentioned
2
too.
billion people in India and
Hold
China
on, that's
still
fine,
buy it.
that's fine. But that's a smaller market with less cost. He's going to be punished because he will not get the price he's getting. He's now paying the best price in the market. His market has shrunk dramatically, okay? So if you only had one game in town, I know I could only sell to you, you'd be a little bit tougher to deal with. I know that. But with that, we're sending a very strong signal, and we're sending a strong signal to our allies too. We're not disrupting the world distribution.
Is that the missing piece of it? Is this more effective if 20 other countries step forward and say they're doing this?
Countries are
Is that
stepping
the
forward
missing
everywhere
piece?
humanly possible. They need backfilled. We should be able to be that backfill, and that's what we're working on. And there should be the LNG, we're going from 8% up to 13%. Getting there quickly, we can go further than that if we do. We have oceans of energy. We have to use that. It's a political weapon today. I mean, not a political weapon. Well, political weapon is more a weapon, period. A weapon of war is what he's using it for.
It
And
is more
basically Nord
effective.
Stream.
It is more effective if you have others that jump in. But not everybody else has the ability to do the backfill. And so they're looking to us and saying, what
Can't
the
you help
hell?
us?
What are you sitting on your hands?
You know,
and you're
Nord Stream-
asking us to keep taking it from Russia? No. They're looking to us and saying, you've got the ability to do more to help all of us. So do it.
Nord Stream
It's
2
not just
right
us
now.
saying this.
Nord Stream 2 is charged, okay, ready to go? By the will of the Germans and the will of the Europeans, they shut it down. That shows the resolve they have. Now, someone's got to help them, and as quickly as we possibly can. Let me say, I know we could go on all day long. I'm gonna just, hold on one second. I really, and then afterwards, but I want to say.
All they do.
One second. I want Brian, basically, we've all heard, and our hearts go out, and I just want everyone to take a moment of thinking about the Ukrainian people, as we sat here today, and the safety we have and the defense of our country. And think about these human beings are basically thrust in a war zone to where their children are at risk, they're at risk, their way of life's at risk, their homes are gone. Think about that. That changed all in 1 week for you and me. And we had someone out there who's always been our friend. He said, man, I wish my friend come help me. I really wish my friend would come. That's really where they're at. Brian, why don't you, basically in his own native language, in your own
No,
native
it's not my native
language.
language. No, it's it's just before 10 o'clock in Kiev. Night has fallen. President Zelensky, Mayor Klitschko, members of the Rada, members of the press are all wearing Kevlar, if they can find it, carrying arms if they have them available. Ukraine's independence is 30 years old. They're a very young country, and we were a very young democracy at one point. Our democracy, as we all know, is 245 years old, and we're the oldest democracy on the planet. And Ukraine and the world are now seeing how hard it is to remain free in an era where evil is rampant across the globe. And for all of our friends in Ukraine, Slava Ukraina, as they say, the rallying cry, glory be to Ukraine. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you. That's the right way to end it. Thank you.
Are you confident that you can get 60 votes for this, and what kind of outreach will you
Well, I think I've never seen anything more bipartisan support than I've seen for this in a bicameral way.
That quickly.
That quickly, we did it one day, and basically when you have Nancy Pelosi saying this is something she would support. Wait a minute, hold on.
If it means reducing reliance on foreign oil, does that add any urgency in your view to kind of deal with your party on a reconciliation bill that contains a lot of the clean energy tax credits that you said you've been in favor of?
Oh, no, we're willing to talk about anything. The bottom line is the production of fossil fuels right now. I mean, wind and solar is not going to put natural gas over there, and, okay, we have to be realistic for what we're trying to do here. The bottom line is we can go from 11 million to 12 million overnight if they just let us. We can build a pipeline in 2 to 6 months that gets 2 billion BCF. We can do that. But the people that are fighting, taking to court all the time, and basically the administration needs to step up and help us on that. And absolutely, we have to go forward with our climate solutions. I'm all for that. I've always been all for that. but it's an all-in policy. I'm not going to throw one out the window for the other. You need the horsepower to run a country. You need the horsepower to be the superpower of the world and be able to have your allies depend on you. And we haven't been there for that. We've throttled back and never throttled back up. That's all I'm saying. And I'll just say this for my own. I would gladly, if ever was a poll being taken, they said, Joe, would you pay 10 cents more a gallon to support the people of Ukraine and stop basically the support of Russia? I would gladly pay 10 cents more a gallon.
Senator Manchin, do you think people will feel that way after they've been told for months by everyone in Congress, inflation is attacked, it's a heavy burden?
Inflation is attacked. This is war.
Will people believe that?
I have to ask them. Take a poll.
Okay.
All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us here at Golden State Times for this press conference. Once again, this was Joe Manchin, Murkowski, Tester, and other Republican and Democrat lawmakers introducing a bill to ban Russian energy imports, including Russian oil. So Senator Joe Manchin, Lisa Murkowski, Jon Tester were the ones that are co-sponsoring all this new act as they hold this press conference to ban Russian oil imports. So let us know what you guys think in the comments section below. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're new to the channel, we encourage you to subscribe and click that notification bell. We'd like to give a big thank you to all of our members, all the patriots with the Trump hats in their next to their names in the chat. Thank you so much for supporting us here at Golden State Times, keeping us live and also keeping us going. So thank you so much for your great help and support, great patriots. Also, I'd like to give a big thank you to all of the moderators for keeping the chat clean and enjoyable for everyone. Have a blessed rest of your day, folks, and God bless every single one of you. If you want to stay up to date on everything that is going on in politics, breaking news, scoops, and everything else in between, join us on our website at www.goldenstatetimes.com. Again, that's goldenstatetimes.com. Thank you so much, folks, and we'll see you on the next one. If there's more live streams, we'll go live. If not, we'll continue our coverage here on YouTube and on our website, goldenstatetimes.com. Have a good rest of your day, folks. God bless, and we will see you soon.